Were you drafted or enlisted?
I enlisted. But they did have a draft at the time.
Just answer the questions.
I'm sorry, just answer the questions.
Is age a question?
I'm gonna leave the
How old
room.
was he? Is that a question? Why don't you ask him how old he was then?
How old were you when you enlisted?
How old were you when you enlisted?
17.
17. Oh.
Why did you join?
Why did I join? Well, you won't like this answer, Mommy. But
Okay.
I quit school. And my father said, if you're going to quit school, you're not going to hang around here. You're going to have to join the Army or something.
Mm.
So I quit school because I didn't want people telling me what to do. And that was really stupid. Because the Army tells you what time to get up, what time to go to bed, what you eat, what you do all day, what you're not allowed. They gave you more rules than I had at home and at school.
So basically,
And they didn't love you like your mommy and dad do. So they didn't care. Go ahead.
do you remember your instructor? Do you remember your instructor?
Do you remember your instructor?
Oh,
When
no.
you enlisted?
No.
No.
That was a long time ago.
Well, do you remember your first few days in the service? Do you remember your first few days in service?
I remember a little bit about it.
What do you remember about it? What do you remember?
Well, I remember that after you have to take an oath. You have to promise that you're going to do the things that they require to join the Army. And you're going to do what you were told. And as soon as I finished with the oath, they told me to go clean the bathroom. And it wasn't like your mommy's bathroom. It was all these stalls and all these sinks and all these urinals. It was a big room.
Did it take a long time to clean it? Did it take a long time to clean it?
It probably took an hour or an hour and a half.
How did you get through it?
How did I get through?
The first couple days.
Yeah, the first
Oh,
couple days.
do what you're told.
Did you ever break a rule? Did you ever not do what you were told?
Yes.
Do you remember anything that you didn't do?
Well, I didn't like people telling me that when I was off, when I did the work and I was done, that I couldn't go anywhere. If I'm done, I should be able to go somewhere, I thought.
Like, where would you want to go if you could go somewhere?
Where would I go? Into town.
So I could do some things, you know.
So did you do that? Did you leave?
Not right away,
Uh-huh.
but after I was in the Army for a while, I would do that sometimes.
It's like sneaking out after curfew.
Yeah.
But it cost me.
Oh no.
Oh, yeah.
What happened?
I lost a stripe. Right? And when they take a stripe off of you, that means you don't get paid as much.
Ooh.
How'd you stay in touch with your family?
Well, at the time, there were payphones. And when you got paid, you could go onto a payphone. And, but there were long lines at the payphones. And you had to have a whole bunch of quarters to be able to keep sticking them in the phone.
I mean, that's probably why.
And you could write a letter.
It's probably why that you could get paid and then ask for quarters instead of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you could get change, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But you only got paid once a month.
You had to make it last.
Yeah. What was the food like?
What does it feel like?
What is the
What was
food like?
Actually, the food was pretty good.
Like, what
But-
was in it?
They had the military had they bought the very best food. They always said that an army travels on its stomach. Yeah, they wanted you strong. They wanted you to be energetic and be ready to move. But since you asked, I will tell you something else. The Army fed you in such a way that, and caused you to work and exercise, you had to exercise every day too, but caused you to work and exercise in such a way that if you were skinny, you gained weight. If you were fat, you lost weight.
So, depending on your weight, it determined how much food you got?
Pardon?
Well,
Determined on your weight, did it determine how much food you got?
I think what he's saying, everybody got the same amount of food, but if you were used to eating more, then you lost weight because they gave you their.
You could eat as much as you want.
Oh, really?
Yeah. At mealtime.
Uh-huh.
But there were no snacks. So you, unless you bought snacks, you could, and you had to have money to do that, unless you bought snacks. But pretty much, if you were skinny, you put on weight. If you were fat, you lost weight. It was because of the combination of exercise and the food that they fed you. You didn't realize it was happening until it happened, and you see everybody else changing.
Whenever I thought about the food that the Army got, I would think of like this, like brown, black slob stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Yeah, when you were in the barracks, then or even out in the field in training, they would give you food just like you eat at home. It was very good food. If you had a good cook, it was very good food. And the cooks worked to do a good job because they were in the Army too. It was very good food. Now, if you went out and you were, it's sort of like camping out, where you weren't living in the barracks, you were living in a tent. Sometimes they'd send cooks with you. Sometimes they wouldn't. And at the time, they would give you something called sea rations, which were basically canned food.
Oh,
And you ate canned stuff.
I probably wouldn't like that.
And if you had to, if you were allowed to build a fire, sometimes you were, then you could warm it up. Sometimes you weren't allowed to build a fire, and then you ate it out of the can just the way it was. They weren't very good.
I'd imagine. Did you have enough food? And, like supply, just in general? Did you have enough supplies?
Oh yeah, the Army was well supplied.
How did you entertain yourself?
Well, when you were in training, you didn't have to worry about it because they controlled every minute of every day. And when you didn't have anything to do, you were looking for a place to go to sleep.
Because you'd have to work a bunch, so you'd be really tired.
Did I have to work?
No,
a bunch?
because
No, because you'd want to go to sleep because you'd be working all the time, so you'd be really tired, right?
I'm sorry, honey.
because you were tired. Just because you worked so much, you were tired. So that's why you wanted to sleep.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. As a matter of fact, you could go to sleep anywhere if you were going for a march, and that's happened a lot. You'd be marching. You would march a long way, and about every hour or so, they would give you a 10-minute break. And so you could sit down along the side of the road and you could go to sleep just in that 10 minutes.
It normally takes me like 10 to 15 minutes just to go to sleep.
Yeah.
When,
It normally takes me like 10 to 15 minutes to actually go to sleep.
yeah, it wouldn't take you that in the Army.
Yeah.
It'd take you 2 or 3 minutes. And you didn't have to be in a soft bed either. And it was because you would get tired.
When you were marching, like, where would you travel? Well, like, where would you like travel?
Where did I travel? Well, the first thing was that I went to Fort Dix in New Jersey. That's where I entered the service. And then I was there for a few days. Then I went to Texas, to Fort Hood, Texas, and I was there probably about 12 or 14 weeks. And then I went to, and that was basic training in Texas. Then I went to Fort Gordon, Georgia, and I went to military police school. And then I went to Fayetteville, North Carolina, and I went to jump school to be a paratrooper. And then I was stationed there for a while. Then I went to Germany. Then I went to Italy. And I was stationed in Italy for about a year and a half.
You traveled to a lot of places.
Yeah.
Did you ever pull any pranks on other people?
Pranks on other people.
Did you
Huh?
ever?
Did you ever pull pranks on other people?
He is a nap, you know.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's just like you and your friends, probably. The friends that you're with, and you might do silly stuff sometimes, yes.
What are some of the pranks that you would pull?
Oh, I don't remember. I mean,
What was that?
just so you know, when I joined the Army, that was 60 years ago. So there's not a lot that I can tell you about the details.
Do you have any more photographs?
Oh.
Do you have any more photographs?
Just
Yeah,
No,
just
these
those.
are-
You want to
These are
hold 'em up?
basically it.
hold them up, honey, so that Amy
Yeah.
can get them in the pictures.
This, that,
LP picture.
Huh?
That's a good one. I think Terry looks like you in the other one. Do you see that?
Did you get it?
Uh-huh.
Okay. This is when, remember I said I went to Fort Gordon, Georgia? And this is when I graduated from MP school. And so then I was in the military police. That was my job. But you could volunteer, and you had to volunteer because you couldn't go here unless you volunteered and they really worked you here. This is the MP uniform that most soldiers wear, is like that. This is the MP uniform that only paratroopers could wear. And you see that, you really can't see it very well, but there's the wings that tell you you graduated from paratrooper school. And here is a picture of a glider and a parachute. And that's mostly we never went in a glider, but you had to use a parachute when you're jumping out of an airplane, and we did that.
How high were you when you jumped out of the airplane?
How high?
Yeah.
Actually, it was set. I can't prove it because I can't see the altimeter on the airplane, but basically it was 1,200 feet, 1,200 feet.
I couldn't do that. I'm scared of heights.
Well, you would have done it. Here's what happens when they train you and to be a parachutist, to be airborne. They're really nasty. It's really hard work. They really push you. They really make things tough. And when you get done with it, they say that a soldier that's gone through this training, and at a certain point, when you're getting ready to jump out of the airplane, you are 97% of your body and your brain is reaction. You're not standing there thinking, oh, gee, this is a long way up. I'm afraid I'm going to jump. When you were being trained, you had to practice jump, and you had to do it a lot. Not out of an airplane. You practice jump off a tower, which was 38, 37 feet in the air. And you have to practice jump out of a tower. And you did that so much, and the training person was there right with you at the tower, and he watched you and he made you do it. It got so that you were more afraid of the training person than you were jumping off the tower. Because he would make you do all kinds of stuff that you didn't want to do. So you just wanted to get away from him. You were glad to jump off the tower. So that's how they trained you. The other thing is, it sounds like 1,200 feet is really high, and it is. It would kill you if you didn't have a parachute. But the lower you were, the better it was for you to not get shot while you were coming down if you were in combat. Because you're coming down slow once the parachute opens up, and people on the ground could be shooting at you. So you wanted two things. You wanted to get on the ground quickly, And preferably you wanted to do it at night so people couldn't see you so well.
Yeah. Did you?
Now the other thing is, it would have been much safer to jump from higher. Yeah, weird, huh?
Yeah.
Because the higher you are, the more time you have for your parachute to open, and the more chance you've got if the parachute doesn't open, you have a reserve parachute. But you have to recognize that that parachute's not going to open, and you need to then respond by opening your reserve parachute, and so that you've got another parachute that will open, and you can get to the ground safely. But when you jumped out of the plane at 1,200 feet, you had about, I guess, around 11 seconds from the time you opened, from the time you went out of the plane until you hit the ground, if you didn't open your parachute. So you got a lot to do in 11 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you jumped out of the airplane, they had something called a static line. So there was a cable in the plane that ran along the length of the plane, and you had part of your parachute, the static line, hooked to this cable. So when you did it, they would say, stand up, and you'd stand up. You would check the person in front of you to make sure his equipment was right, and the person behind you would check your equipment to make sure it was right. And then hook up, stand in the door, and jump. And that's the way it went. But, so the first part of it was automatic. Your parachute would open because of the static line. Then you count to 4,000, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. You immediately look up and make sure your chute is there, although if it's there, you know that something happened, because when the parachute opens up and you're falling down, you're traveling at about 150 miles an hour at that point. Yeah, well, the plane is flying, and he's moving forward at 100 and some miles an hour, and you're falling at 100 and some miles an hour. So it's a pretty big jolt when the parachute tries to stop you. It goes boom, like that. But now you have to make sure it's not torn or anything. So you look up and you inspect it. If everything is okay, then cool. You just ride on down and make sure you hit right, and so you don't hurt yourself. You had to land a special way, not like the skydivers do. And the other thing is, talk about skydiving, it looks really cool to see them come down and floating on down and so forth. But when the military comes down, they're not skydiving. They've got 60, 80, 160 pounds of equipment that they're responsible for, attached to them. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to go jump today. No, you're going to work. But you got all this equipment attached to you anyhow. Then you come down after the 4,000. You've used up 4 of your 11 seconds, probably 5 of your 11 seconds now, to make sure that the first parachute is all right. If it's not all right, then you got to pull your reserve. And when the reserve opens, you're really close to the ground. That's why it's better to be further away, but not the way it works.
Did you ever come close to like really close to the ground when you had to pull a reserve? Like, did your
I never had to pull
never-
my reserve. Yeah. But you have to be ready to.
In that picture, did you since you got to wear that suit that not most people got to wear? Did that make you feel special?
Pardon?
You in that picture, you being able to wear that vest thing, did it make you feel special?
Of course, you worked really, really hard to get that. You could not just anybody could wear that. And not only did you work really, really hard, but if at any time during training, remember I said you were more afraid of the instructor because he was really nasty and he made you do all sorts of things that were hard. If at any time during the time you were doing this, going through the training, you said, I don't want to do this, you were done. You were done. You went home. Not home, but you weren't going to be a paratrooper. When we went to paratrooper school, they sat us all down like you would in a gymnasium on the bleachers, right? They sat us all down on the bleachers and they said, look at the person on your right, look at your person on your left, and remember who they are. Because if you graduate from jump school, they won't be there.
So the person on your left and right weren't there?
No, they weren't.
Only a few get to graduate.
Only 1 in 3 get through jump school. The rest didn't make it.
Did you feel bad for them?
Hmm?
Did you feel bad?
No, I felt bad for me. No, you feel sorry when you see these things happen, but the person makes up their mind. They just say, you know what? It's not worth it. Most of the time, it's because they either make up their mind or maybe they can't do something. They just can't do it. If they can't do it, it doesn't matter. You're done. But most of the time, it's because they push you really hard, and if you don't want to be pushed that hard, you can go home. One of the things that happened in training, just so you know, they had something called the bear pits. And they would take, it was round, kind of like an above ground swimming pool, only it was below ground. It was dug in the ground, and I would say it was about 15 feet across, which is not very big. It's about the smallest above ground pool you can get. And they would take 20 people from one team and 20 people from the other team. And they would make you get in the pit and face each other, and you were chest to chest in the pit. And it was 6 feet deep. So it was my head height or whatever. And they would say, go. And it was each team's responsibility to throw the other team out of the pit. They didn't really care how it happened.
Oof.
They just like threw them out? Just like
Yeah.
picked them up and threw them?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And you know what happened if you were the team that got thrown out of the pit? You had to go in against another team. Right away.
But
And
so
then if that happened to you, you were really tired. And if you lost again, you had to get back in for the next team. So because you could be there all day, and it was no fun. So what you wanted to do was you wanted to make sure the first time you got in there, you used all your energy so that you didn't lose.
Did you ever lose?
Once. And that's when I realized how bad it was to lose.
How long did you, when you had lost, how many more rounds did you have to do?
Just the next one. Because I didn't want to do that. And then they had exercises you had to go through. And you ran a long time. And you do this kind of thing in the bear pits. And it was August when I went through, and it was in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. So sometimes August is really, really hot, and you were all full of sand and mud and sawdust. Another thing they used to do is they would take like a soccer ball, and there would be two teams. We did it in two teams, and they'd be lining up on either side of the soccer field, and there would be team captains, which were the sergeants, and they would send like 5 guys out and to put the soccer ball in the middle of the field. They'd send 5 guys out to go get that soccer ball and bring it back. And then the other guy would send 5 guys out, tell them the same thing, and they do that at the same time. And they would get out there, and then there would be wrestling and carrying on, trying to get the soccer ball. And if your team was starting to lose, then your sergeant would send out 5 more guys to help you. And guess what?
What?
The other guy would send out 5 more guys. Until you had everybody on the team scrambling for that. That was another one of those things. If you lost, you get to do it again. Then, by this time, you're all sweaty, all dirty, I mean, really dirty. And they take a fire hose, like you see on the fire trucks. And you have to get down on your hands and your toes and pass over the metal grates. And they tried to knock you down with the fire hose. But it was so hot, and the water felt so good, you didn't want to get out of it because it was kind of cooling you off. But you couldn't lay down there. You had to be on your hands and on your toes.
Did you ever have to kill anybody?
No.
Okay.
Neither as an MP nor in anything that was going on. The closest I ever got to war, that's what you're there, that's the Army, right? The closest I ever got to war was something called the Bay of Pigs. Did you learn about the Bay of Pigs in history?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the Russians helped put missiles in Cuba. And the United States blockaded the Russians, and we were on a pretty close trigger for war. And they loaded all of us up, took us to the airport, put parachutes on us, gave us guns, gave us ammunition, and gave us all our supplies, and we sat on the tarmac, the runway type area, or a place close to the runway, waiting for the word to get on the planes, and they were going to fly us over and drop us in Cuba. And we sat there for, I don't know, 10, 12 hours waiting.
Wow.
Did you ever?
But we
actually-
didn't go, thank the Lord. The war didn't start, and we didn't have to go. That was the Bay of Pigs. That's what they called that.
Why'd they call it the Bay of Pigs?
You know what? I'm not 100% certain. I could guess, but that's all it would be, and I shouldn't be able to do that.
What's your next question? Is this all you have left? Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
Do you remember when your service ended?
Yes, I do.
What happened?
Well, that's an interesting story. What happened is we were in Italy, and so I had to travel from Italy to Germany, and we traveled by train from Italy to Germany in sleeper cars on a train. And for when you were going to sleep, you were in the sleeper cars. But then we got on a boat, a troop ship from Germany to the United States. And we crossed the North Atlantic Ocean in a troop ship. There were about, I think there was about 5 cots, like bunk beds, stacked one on top of the other. And we were down in the hold of the ship where this was. And no windows, of course. And it was the North Atlantic Sea, and there were real bad storms at the time. So there were 30-foot seas. Do you know what that means? That means waves as tall as this house. And we were at the front of the ship, which is probably not where you want to be, because the front of the ship goes like this over the 30-foot seas, and then it goes wham, and back down the other side. Yeah. I was afraid when I got on the ship that if I got on the bottom of the bottom bunk, that somebody was going to get seasick in one of the bunks on top of me. So I made sure I got the top bunk.
Top bunk.
The very top.
Why would, if they got seasick, why would their puke go onto you? How would that happen?
Well, your boat's going up like this and down. I'm sure it didn't matter where you were going to get puke on you. Oh.
Yeah, it was going to come over the side
Yeah.
of the thing, but anyhow, that was the trip back. It took 11 days to do that. Sometimes it was so bad they wouldn't let us get up on deck. And when we were on deck, when we were allowed to get on deck because the seas weren't quite as bad as they had been, then I remember looking out, and they had railings that had wires in them, so forth. And I remember looking at the bottom opening of the railing. And from the bottom opening of the railing, or even the top for that matter, sometimes the ship not only was going like this, but it was going like this too. And sometimes you would look out through the top railing, and all you could see was water. And then the next minute, all you could see was sky.
Did you get seasick?
The answer is yes and no. I didn't throw up, but then I didn't eat much.
Oh,
and,
gotcha.
And I didn't feel good. Everything was, sometimes if you were walking across the floor, especially down below where you can't see anything, and that makes it so much worse where you can't see what's happening, because your brain is telling you that you're moving like crazy, but everything around you is staying pretty much the way it is, unless you're in a mess hall or something, in which case it's all sliding all over the place. But when you go to walk across the ship, sometimes as the ship is coming up, you can't get your feet off the floor. And sometimes if the ship is going down, you feel like you're hanging in the air.
That's crazy.
Right? Because it's going like this, and you're going like that too. So when it's going like this, it's pressing real hard on you to stay down, and when it's going like that, it's dropping, and you have to drop with it. Now, finish the story. When we got to New York, we went through all these long lines, which you did the whole time you were in the service. Hurry up and wait. You get in a line, they do what they're going to do, and then you go to the next station and the next station and the next station. When you got out of the service, you went through this big, long line and signing papers and turning stuff in and all of this other stuff, and them giving you your last paycheck, and you walk out the door and you're outside, and there's nobody telling you what to do. Just like that. For 3 years, you've been going through these lines, they're telling you what to do, where to go, all of that kind of stuff. You walk out that last door, and there's nobody there telling you what to do. And you're all by yourself. And they don't care how you get home. They don't care that you don't have a car. They don't care that you don't have a bus ticket. You're all by yourself. But you're not broke because they gave you your last money.
Yeah.
And you have to, but now you have to figure out how you want to go home. You want to fly home, you want to take a train, you want to take a bus, you want to walk? Or do you not want to go home? So that's it. You're done. Not really done, because when you join the Army, you have to spend 3 years on active duty, and then you have to spend 3 years on reserve duty. You don't have to go to meetings or anything because you've got your 3 years active duty. But if a war breaks out, they have the right to call you back in for 3 years.
Did you get called back in?
No. For which I'm thankful. And so I got out. And here I am.
60 years later.
No, actually it's 57 years later, because I was there for 3.
Friendship question.
Do you still know any of your military friends? Like, did you keep in touch?
No. I mean, I did for a little while. It didn't last long.
Do you remember some of the names of some of your military friends that you had?
I suspect if I really tried to think about it, I could come up with 1 or 2. I'll tell you something that was interesting, though. When I was coming back when I was getting ready to board the ship to come back to New York after I'd been in Germany all this time, all the guys after basic training split up and went their various ways. But the guys that I was in basic training with, there were some of them on the ship coming back home with me.
Cool.
Matter of fact, the guy that was on, we lived in bunk beds in basic training. And this guy was on the top bunk. He was there, coming back. The same guy I bunked
cool.
with was coming back.
That's cool.
Where were you? Like when you signed all the papers, you were finally over with it. Where were you? Like, where did you end up going?
Where did I end up getting out? I don't know the exact address, but I can tell you it was close to Grand Central Station in New York.
And then you went back to New Jersey?
Yes,
Yeah.
I was going back to New Jersey.
All right. Thank you. Is that all? All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.